every dementia resident has a power of attorney, but assuming that the power of attorney is overseas, then the best day-to-day advocate is the person who is closest to the dementia resident and who is interested in understanding the issues at hand. Now, to be informed of the issues at hand, the best place to go to for that is the clinical notes, and getting a copy of the clinical notes to be completely updated and informed. And you'll need to have the okay from the power of attorney to get the copy of the clinical notes. But assuming you've got that, there's a vast amount of information that you'll get to know about in terms of the residents eating, sleeping, drinking, the medications they're on, and their behavioural issues, if any. Now, the doctor gets to know about all these aspects, of which you can go to the doctor's meeting as well, and from there you can find out the direction in terms of medication and aspects to be able to help behavioural issues if there are such things happening with the dementia resident. But the first thing really is to go through the clinical notes step by step. They're often a very thick document, 50, 100 pages. The initial assessment, that's vast. That's often 20, 30 pages, going through, the behavioural aspects, the intellectual aspects, physical aspects, social, psychological, etc. It's all broken down into segments and vast amount of detail, right back to the history of the resident and their social history, their emotional history, etc. A lot of this information, if not got from the dementia resident, will be got from the partner or the power of attorney. So once all this vast amount of information is gathered, then from there it's determined in the unit what activities the dementia resident will, like to partake in, what their diet is, what their drinking habits are, toileting issues, if any, etc. So the more you become informed of all these aspects, you're really in a very good high position to be able to communicate then with the medical staff and at the doctor's meeting. Particularly because there's a lot of terminology in clinical notes. And if you're not up to speed with this terminology, in medical meetings or in the doctor's meetings, just a brief explanation can be given to you, but you don't know the background. And so it's difficult for you to be able to ask questions from that standpoint. But if you've read the clinical notes and you understand the background, then you'll be able to give informed answers, ask informed questions, and also get informed answers from the doctor and the medical staff. So all this research work and study really does pay off. For example, if your mother's not sleeping and the nurse has told you that she's not sleeping, she's up all night, she's exhausted all day, and the doctor's thinking that maybe she needs some medication to settle her down, and you are concerned about this because side effects of medication, etc. So when you read the clinical notes, you note that she's having coffee as one of her preferences. Now, what happened was that the power of attorney forgot to put the decaf coffee. They knew that the person drank coffee, but they didn't realize it was decaf coffee. But you, as their close, relative, on a day-to-day basis, you know that your mother has decaf coffee. So you're pretty sure that she's up all night because of the caffeine stimulation from the coffee. So you bring this up at the doctor's meeting and you say, look, I think my mother's not sleeping because she's having caffeine. She's not used to caffeine. She can manage caffeine in cups of tea, but coffee is much more of a stimulant for her, especially if she has a cup in the afternoon. And one of the nurses present may well say, well, yes, she is actually having a cup of coffee, 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock at afternoon tea. And you can say to the doctor, well, look, I really don't think she'll manage that caffeine-wise. And it could well be that she's not sleeping because of that. Could we try, I'll bring in some decaf coffee. And how would that be that she's given decaf coffee when she wants a cup of coffee? And the nurse can say, yes, I'll talk to the carers. We'll get a special container, put the name of your mother on it. That's no problem for her to have that decaf coffee. And then we can monitor sleeping patterns and see how she goes. And at the next doctor's meeting, we'll get the result of that. So this is just one way of you knowing from the clinical notes that she's having coffee. I mean, otherwise there's so many details to the day-to-day goings on of a dementia resident that it's hard to keep up with all the details. And you can't be asking questions like all the time, every day. Whereas if you read the clinical notes, you can ask specific questions from that at doctors' meetings and or to the staff, and then also from the clinical notes. Another really valuable aspect is to know the routine of the unit, because then you'll know from reading the notes that toileting's at 10 o'clock, say, lunch at 12, toileting again at 2, cares are in the morning from, say, 8 till 11, most of them, and you'll know from the notes the time that your mother has a shower, etc. So from there, if you want to ask any questions, particularly to the carer, if you can read your mother's routine, you'll then get an idea of what the carer's routine is like. So, for example, the carer may well be free 11:30 before lunch preparation, or 2:30 after afternoon toileting's finished. And if you've assumed that and you look for her at that time and she's free, and you can ask her, is this a good time for me to come and ask questions about mum, at 11:30 in the morning? And she may well say, yes, that's perfect time, just before I get ready for lunch. So you've worked that out from the clinical notes. And then any particular details that you need to know about your mother or that she has to inform you of. I mean, often little things like, oh, your mother needs some more toothpaste, or she needs some more cream for her legs, or her toothbrush is a bit worn out. These little things the carers can easily tell you in a conversation in the day, and she'll look out for you. Also, the carer, if they know you well by now, will look out for you and say, oh, by the way, mum needs such and such, if you could get that for her. So this is the way that this day-to-day correspondence and liaison works really well in a dementia unit. And these small points, it's unlikely that a clinical manager would write about these things in an email. I mean, they may, but often they get missed. I mean, big things like, your mother needs another pair of shoes because they got lost or something like that, they'll email you about. But whether they need a new toothbrush, or a new singlet, they're not as likely to communicate about. They might just, the singlet will do, Whereas if the carer can see that it's getting thin and there's not much warmth in it, and they're a caring carer, they will want the resident to have warm singlets for the winter. These are the little things that make all the difference in a resident's life. And if you can be the best advocate for them, they will have the best quality of life as a result. And a happy life indeed in a dementia unit is possible. So I've written these 2 books, The Resident's Voice and The Resident's Rise, both from a dementia unit, and they can be got on Amazon, soft copy, hard copy, ebooks are popular, and on my website, www.pietavalentine.com. So if you're a reader, it's good to read these books because everything's in, order, specifically laid out with all these techniques, similar to the videos, but with the book, you can take it in your handbag to that's just handbag size, specifically handbag size and light. And you can just write all your notes, dates, notes, information you want to give to the rest of the family, information you want to ask at the doctor's meeting or the nurse. You can just jot it down in the book with stickers or whatever is your way of, keeping track of things. And then the book can act as a diary because all the techniques are at the back of the book. So there's those aspects you want to keep track of. You can sticker, put your notes in it, and then inform friends and family of specific aspects or bring up the specific questions at the doctor's meeting, with a lot of the background information being in the book, and then you just asking the questions that you need to on behalf of your resident family member. Thank you for your looks, likes and support.